Is that the argument?
Yeah, literally, I do. Okay, so I don't know if any of you guys go onto like the LOL Reddit or whatever.
Unfortunately, sometimes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't
I
know.
check
I
it
think I've
occasionally, yeah.
gotten dumber. But no.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Salt Mine. This is Season 4, Episode 6. And we got the full crew back on here. I'm Gordo. I'm joined by TDS, Slayer, and Quax. Welcome aboard, everybody. We just finished the penultimate week of the NACL regular season, which makes this the penultimate regular season Salt Mine episode. Or I guess the last regular season Salt Mine episode, because next time we'll do our playoff preview and awards for regular season mega episode that's going to take 2 hours. So
Oh God, yeah. Wait,
Yeah,
I forgot we
well,
do. I forgot we do
Oh, not that
teams
one.
too.
yeah, get
That's
real
gonna take
excited for that,
forever.
everybody. We're going to have to figure out some all-pro teams over this next week. But for now, we're going to keep it hopefully short, definitely sweet, and chat about what has gone down over the course of the last week. First up, how's the week been, everybody? Quax, you're fresh off an appearance on NACL 2 with Hawk. How was that? Congratulations.
Really fun. Obviously we might mention open qualifiers here and there, but the competition definitely heating up in the second one for sure. Got to witness a 2-0 upset by PNWs over BlackRock, which was really surprising to see. That was a really surprising series that none of us had predicted. I will say, however, I did predict PNW to win one game, whereas Hawk and Camcom predicted it to be a 2-0. So I was still wrong, but I had the faith, at least a baseline amount of faith in PNW, which not a lot of people seem to have, and I'm hoping now that changed people's minds because they look really good, and I'm excited to see what's in store in the coming weekends.
Good stuff, good stuff. Well, yeah, super exciting stuff there. Hopefully, first of many appearances on the official Riot streams. Always a great milestone to get into your belt there. And the rest of us, we were covering on Aegis. We were chilling out. We had our Slayer did a Salt Mine stream on Sunday. So always remember, stay tuned to our Twitter and our Twitch. There's always not always, but there's frequently open qualifier games going on there. Going on with Aegis, who are not our partners now, but maybe our partners again in the future. They're always covering streams as well. I'm often on there. If I'm not on there, Slayer's often on there. So good stuff. Good places to watch some Tier 3 action and get excited about promo relegations, which are going to be here before you know it. But getting back into the meat of Tier 2, let's talk a little bit about what's going down this past week. We had 4 more series. We had one more team qualify for playoffs in Blue Otter, an unexpected one.
Yeah.
One that we thought was going to finish 9th for a while. So, shout out to Bully. He's earned himself at least one more Salt Mine episode there, as he's going to be around for 2025
He knows
now.
it too. He knows it too. He
probably wants to come and what is it called? Take it on to some people that doubted him. I wasn't one of them because I actually
I also was not
playoff,
one of them.
So
Yeah.
at the very least, I'm safe from that. And fully deserved, by the way. They beat it 2-0 TLC. It's not an easy task.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was rooting for him. I don't know if I predicted them above 9th, but I'm
Fair
happy
enough.
about it though. Man, we've been covering Samikin for forever on Risen Divine League and stuff. So the fact that he's making a name for himself up there, super happy to see Levitate and Quacker, who we've been standing for on this podcast for forever. Love to see all these guys finding their success. I guess that's as good a place to start as any, actually, as the Blue Otter versus Team Liquid series. Like you were saying, TDS, 2-0 for Blue Otter. Probably not the expected result, and a bit of a drift away from the kind of pattern of more solid play that I feel like we had been seeing out of Team Liquid for the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. It looked pretty shaky in my opinion. Especially the first game, it kind of felt like both teams were off their rocker a bit because Blue Otter had a pretty abysmal early game. I think Team Liquid actually did really good in subjugating them early, getting dragons. They got 3 dragons to 0, and we're in a really good spot to win the game. one little fight rolls around, one dragon take later, and suddenly Blue Otter have like a 1,000 gold lead, and they carry that. They win a couple more fights, and the game was practically over. So the first game to me kind of spelt say worry for Team Liquid, and then going into playoffs, and then really some improvement for Blue Otter, because I felt like Blue Otter's biggest weakness was it definitely was like a quintessential Blue Water game in my opinion, because they're definitely their biggest weakness, or the thing that I have always found that has been their weakest point in their games is their early game. It kind of feels like they struggle with that. They've got good team fighting though, and at the end of the day, that is what carried it through. And this was against kind of the quintessential team fighting team, I would say, in Team Liquid. I would say, other than Dragonsteel, Team Liquid are probably one of our best team fighting teams in the NACL. I think they've shown some really good stars around those 5v5s and 4v4s whenever they have Roamer split pushing in particular, or maybe Jenkins split pushing in particular. They're good about that. The fact that Blue Otter were actually able to overcome that after such a demoralizing, first, I want to say like 30 minutes is really impressive, and I hope they build off of that kind of style.
I thought you were going to say such a demoralizing first like 7 weeks up
Yeah.
until they started winning.
Well,
Everything was
that's
bad
true.
until it wasn't.
But it's good for them that they pulled this one through, because we on the last episode had doubts about their ability to actually do this. It was our concern about these guys and Team Liquid, and we thought they were definitely going to be able to take the series after TL. We were
Yeah, I thought Team Liquid was doomed, and they would be banking on the matchup against DSG this week, who are going through their own roster changes. But yeah, they've dodged that entirely, and now our conversation about relegations is going to look very, very different. I will say, what's interesting is I led this in by saying that Team Liquid had been looking more solid, but when I go back and review it, actually, like Team Liquid have
I
like
think you're about to say what I was gonna say.
yeah, like they've actually
Yeah.
just kind of like been kind of the dead middle of the pack the whole split long. Like they've beaten the teams below them and
Yeah.
lost
That's
to
what I
teams
said
above
at the
them.
start too.
Yeah, and
Like,
and now with Blue upsetting them, that's like they're going to finish 4-5. Their season's done.
Yeah.
Um,
They actually
or-
followed that really good trend. Just to put a point, like TLC actually followed the trend of being pretty middle of the pack all the way through. Like
Yeah.
they won against the teams below, bar Blue Water, and lost against the teams that are above them, which is Dragonsteel, Beer, and Flyc.
Well,
Finally
it's
enough,
crazy.
so,
Blue Otter might prove to be a team above them here too. If they
yeah,
if they 2-0
technically.
DSG,
yeah,
then they both end 4-5, and Blue Otter ends
Yeah.
11-12, whereas Team Liquid ends 10-11.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of these,
Exactly.
one of Disguised or Blue Otter are likely to finish above TL. It's funny because TL won't fall to 7 with the math here. They'll likely stay 6 because Disguise is above them now. But if they lose, like they'll end up.
So either way, they'll have lost to
8
somebody below them because
Yeah,
DSG
yeah.
beat them as well.
Yeah.
So
They'll end up either 8-13 if they lose the sweep, or 9-12, and that'll put them under TL. And then if Blue Otter sweep, they'll jump up, sweep, or even I believe win the series. They'll be 11-13 or 11-12, which would I think put them just above them as well. So it's definitely a funny spot to be in. But I'm glad you pointed it out.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed it out because they've beat Winthrop, CCG, AOE, and Supernova. So outside of Supernova, it's 3 teams that aren't even locked into the playoffs. 3 teams that are having to deal with the relegation circuit right now.
Exactly. It's not the best look.
Yeah, I think Quax nailed it. Like the Blue Otter wins through their team fighting at the end of the day, but like this is definitely not how I want to see Team Liquid lose a series, because I think it's how they've lost most of their losses, is like they've very frequently been ahead, and they just skip steps in the setups, man. I think I've said this 3 weeks in a row now. They don't get wards down for the objectives, or they overchase for fights that they shouldn't, and they just get sloppy with it, and it costs them. But it's like not the setups that are wrong. And this isn't really how I want to see Blue Otter win either. Not that like you take it as a Blue Otter fan, but it's like it's not the kind of clean, like having a solid early plan, executing on it, and then closing out the game that you want from like a well-drilled high-level team. It's like having to make these comebacks up against a team that has outperformed you in the earlier stages.
it's equally as flabbergasting for Blue Otter to be able to come back 2 times in a row against a team that got Dragon Soul twice in a row, because they got Infernal Soul in game 1, then they got Ocean Soul in game 2. I don't know how you come back from that, but congratulations to Blue Water. It's equally flabbergasting to see Blue Water come back from that, as it is disappointing as a Team Liquid fan to see you lose from that kind of position. Because particularly when you look at players, I would say like on Team Liquid Challengers, you look at players. I would say like Spawn, like Roamer, these people that are super good in the laning phase. Like I think in particular Roamer is one of the best, is the most lane dominant mid laners that we've got in the NACL. I think he has piloted those marksmen really well. When he builds up a lead and then it kind of just feels like around team fights, they find just some way to throw it. And then they lose, right? Because they were ahead the entire game. They lost a couple of team fights. Bam, game's over. You lost. It just really feels like their mistakes are, they can never put a band-aid over any mistakes that they make. They just let that wound fester, and eventually sometimes they just die out. So like that's just what happens when you're against these better teams, right? Like you don't let these leads go to waste. And I feel like that's the biggest thing holding Team Liquid back from really getting into the upper echelon of teams. Which is kind of disappointing to see, because I feel like a lot of these players have proven
And
themselves to be, very good.
And as someone that has worn the rose tinted glasses with them for quite a bit, because I am one of the people that say that they are going to become much better come playoffs. They have shown before that they are that sort of team that ramps up better going into playoffs than in the regular season. I'm beginning to feel like that is going to be much more difficult this time around for TLC than it was ever before. Just
I
because,
agree.
like the dynamic always was, first 5 weeks it was sketchy. They got 1 or 2 wins, but it was sketchy. Then they begin to evolve, become better. They are getting more wins. They get 1 win against a top team that is way above them or above them at the time, and they are able to use that as a jumping pad to get even higher when they get into playoffs. The problem is that their mistakes right now are the same mistakes we saw against Vurex, the same mistakes we saw against the previous opponent, Flyc, if I'm not wrong. So
Mhm.
like those same mistakes are just repeating and repeating and repeating. And I'm not sure if it's going to be actually corrected come playoffs, which is the scary part for TLC. Because as of now, if they end up, like, let's say it ends as of right now, right? They are bound to have Fly C, and if it doesn't get worse than that, if Blue Water wins against DSG in the next week, then they more than likely would end up going against Fear X, which they already shown that they are not the favorites in that series. So like that is a scary prospect to look at your first series, and then the lower bracket is not necessarily easier either.
No, we'll see if TLC can really scale up again like they always do. But it's definitely the rudest of awakenings going into that set. I do want to go back to the point, Gordo said, which was fair. It's Blue Otter. You don't want to win games that way, because it doesn't show like a ton of growth. I do think overall, though, getting these wins and getting them to the spot they're in has Blue Water accomplished their preliminary goals. I mean, they are one of the few promotion teams that are now going to stay in the NACL and not immediately drop back down, that a lot of people were afraid of. There was a lot of talk once we knew CCG and Blue Otter were going up and their rosters were announced. They're like, oh, all right, well, we're going back to the flippy flop. It's not the case. And it's really poetic as well that the game that solidified it for them was Samikin playing Zoe and showing that he could play his Zoe on the tier 2 level and absolutely body and still find ways to change and play it. I know he was talking a lot on social media about how he adjusted to this fleet Zoe without a mana item, which sounds like absolutely absurd. It just shows that, like Samikin, this guy is all he cares about is becoming the best player he could possibly be. He's constantly learning. When he's not in scrims, he's not playing the NACL, he's streaming his solo queue games where he's just gapping people on these pocket champions we're talking about. It's really cool to see the arc that he's been on, and Gordo kind of alluded to at the very start, where it was like, for me and Gordo at least, it was watching him play in a random Champs League playoffs in a tier 3 tournament where we were like, this guy's kind of bodying people with Zoe and Lux if they let him get through. And now it's bodying a majority of NACL mid laners, and most importantly, vindicating my take that Samikin would be a top 6 mid in the NACL this split. I think
He's one
I wasn't
spot
ready
up.
for this to be sprung on me, but I think you're right.
I
He's
really
one
I
do.
spot
said
up.
I
6.
really
technically.
do.
6.
Like dude, I really think like especially if like Fearless is truly the future of LCS, and not just LCS but like just drafting in general, like how we'll do champ select. Like that is the future of how competitive play turns out. Samikin is perfect for it. He has such a good champion pool for it. He has his style. He has his picks. He can play meta if the situation calls for it. I would certainly think that that's something he wants to improve on before potentially taking the next step. But the fact that he's able to play things like the Zoe and dominate just about anybody, to me really signals that this guy thrives in the kind of environment that League is transitioning to as time goes on, which is really cool to see.
Well, I
Yeah,
do. The
Right.
other thing, and this is probably going to fly under the radar to most NACL viewers who don't, if they don't engage with Tier 3 that much. But I also I do think that this is a bad meta for Samikin. Like, I don't think.
It's a terrible
It
meta
is.
for
It
Samikin.
really
It's a
is.
terrible
It's
one.
about to get so
It is.
much better with the Azir
Yeah.
Orianna Syndra buffs. The fact that he's able to play like this against Corki, Trist, Zeri, Misfortune, Lucian, Ezreal. Help me name other marksmen because literally all of them are being played mid lane right now. It's kind of absurd.
Yep.
It's not
and
even
those
just the mid lane marksman because it's the AP junglers. It also enables a lot of those AD like
yeah.
Yone
Yep.
picks to come out too. So it's which is also still not Samikin's meta. So
Yep.
it's really just
But no, it's like you look at the rest of this year, like ACL, Hui, Azir, Talia, Nico. You look at his time in the promotion tournament. It was the Hui, it was the Lux, it was the Talia, it was the Annie. The Aurelion Soul was something
And-
else he was showing a fair
Yeah.
bit
Presence
of.
from him was great. It was permabanned to until a certain point.
Yep.
Like
And then
he is a really good player on
and then
that.
ACL winter playoffs again, showing up. It's the Hui, it's the Orianna, it's the Azir. Like he's a mage player at heart. And he's shown a bit of that even in NACL this split. Like his most played is Hui, like who else in the
Yeah.
NACL is in that kind of position. But, his playing the Corki as necessary, played some Ezreal. He's not like, he's got one Tristana game. Like he's not playing the AD mids as much as others are. And it's like it's noticeable right now, but like when we go back to a more traditional mid lane meta, which 75% of the time is where we're at, then I think he'll look even better.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, I just want to give a quick shout out because I agree with Temikin, but like I think the biggest step up that was shown so far from Blue Water has to be Levitate. No,
Yeah.
Oh,
like
yeah.
his performance in
Yeah.
to help Blue Water be carried in some situations is great. Like the second game on the series, he was popping out
Huge.
damage consistently, really well positioned, finding the angles with the team. And I love to see this story from Levitate because he was always the guy that was, I would say, similar to someone like Sotsi, always on the cusp of going to an ACL and then staying there on the cusp.
Yep.
And then this time around, he gets the chance and he's showing up really, really well. Maybe not early NECL in the early weeks, but this time around, he's really coming together.
I agree. He had a huge Kaisa game in week 7 too.
Yeah.
Like he's had a couple of MVP performances over these last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I
will hang on, Slayer. I just want to add one more note to Levitate. This guy reads. Thank God, this guy actually reads. Because in his Zeri game that he popped off in Heaven, goddamn, I love him so much. He built Mortal Reminder over LVR against Team Liquid's comp. Read the patch notes, said this is a good item here, and didn't fall into the usual Riot Games recommended Boris builds because, God, I don't know, man. I am just so ecstatic when players read patch notes and build correctly.
rare
That
trait.
is my thing right there.
born and spoken by a true color caster right there. It's the most color caster line ever. I love it.
I was
I
even
was
more color than I could ever be.
the only thing I was gonna say is from the small snippets I've heard of some of their comms, and you talk about how Blue Water are really strong to their team fighting. I think a lot of that credit goes to music, knowing this is a very young team still, music included. it's not Quacker making for these calls. It's certainly not going to be Samick and Levitate right now. From what I've understood, it's mostly Music looking to make these proactive moves and go through the right setup steps. So, it's always fun to talk about. Samikin's pocket Zoe that deletes everybody. Quacker can body a lot of 1v1 matchups when he's on, and Levitate coming along online. But those fight setups and those little niche things, I've been really impressed by Music for a guy who's in his rookie split in the NACL.
Yeah, welcome Team Liquid Music. They're going to try and hire the guy to set up fights and shore up any kind of weaknesses that they might have for the next year because God knows they need it.
I mean, barring a pretty good playoff run for Blue Otter, as much as it would hurt me, I wouldn't be shocked if this team gets CCG promotion rostered by some of these other squads.
Yeah.
It's hard to
especially
compete.
with a lot of their players being like older, right? Like Team Liquid, I don't know if I don't know if you would ever be able to find this out, but I'd be willing to bet like a decent chunk of money or maybe RP, if you ask nicely, that Team Liquid probably have the highest mean age of any team. And so as a result, I would be willing to bet that next year we'll probably see some roster adjustments from them because I think some of their players might just be kind of over it, especially because this split itself has been kind of subpar from them. But that's just kind of a theory that I have.
Let's see. I mean, I bet I don't want to get too deep into this, but like Roamer's gonna boomerang. I bet like because they have to pay him an LCS wage because he's an import.
Really?
He's
Yeah,
on the global contract database, so he has to be making
four
LCS
of the
minimum.
5 have to be. Like I would assume 4 of the 5 probably are not going to come back. I would say the most likely to come back is Kim Down, just because Kim Down is already he was already there with the Team Liquid system. He's been there for 1 year already, and I feel like a support is obviously not that difficult to replace, but it's also someone that the longer you have them there, the easier it is to build him to what you want him to be. Like he's the easiest position I would say to try and mold into what you want. Whereas I think the other positions it's much more difficult to find that. Especially if they are talented enough. So like I feel like the other 4 members from AD carry to top probably are not going to be staying here. I would say particularly Kiel because I think he's the best player so far from TLC. I don't expect him to stay there if he's not going to get either any chances or if it doesn't feel like it's going to be a competitive roster. So I would assume Kiel is one of the more likely to go away.
Let's see. It'll be
Totally
interesting. I don't want to dive too deep into that for now, but
yeah,
definitely something to talk about. Let's talk about new DSG a little bit. So DSG gets to play a series against Dragonsteel, which is not a position you want to have to be in. So they get 2-0'd, as many other teams have. They run a temp roster here with Brandini top and Tenacity bot lane. We've already gotten word that for this next week, they are going to be running Tenacity back in top lane, and they've gotten Manui from CCG in the latest in NACL poaching news, perhaps. So that's going to be their new roster coming in for the final week. Again, they're locked playoffs, so I'm not too concerned about this result either way between them and Blue Otter. But it's going to be interesting that this will be the roster that they field for playoffs, presumably, because they're kind of running out of time to keep tinkering with it.
Yeah.
I think this was probably so. I think we all knew that it was going to be one of the AD carries that is either NACL bound or at NACL level. I don't think they were going to go lower than that. Now, I got 50% right of what I thought was going to happen. Rockboom did come back. He wasn't in the team, and he did come back, so he is technically going to. Yeah, I'm glad that I called Rockboom because I almost forgot about him. Like I was able to watch the roster, so I didn't get an insider bureau. I saw the teams that played at the start of the season, and I remember Rockboom existed. So that's all the things that I was able to piece together. But I wasn't expecting to get a poaching situation so late into the season. Like I would assume if CCG lost their last series, that would have been a more likely situation, right? Because if CCG goes down into a relegation tournament, Minu has every right in the world to think, okay, I get a chance to actually stay in the NECL and play in the NECL. I think that's much better in my opinion. But it's before relegation tournament, you actually are taking away the chance of CCG being able to even fight. Even if I think Rockboom is not a bad player and I think he can actually contest Minu in what he's capable of doing, I just feel like at the last moment, taking away a player before they play probably their most important series of the year is kind of a bad look for DSG, especially for an org that was all about we're the fun guys of the NACL and they just come in and do that. I feel like it doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth. Now it's not illegal, and I'm honestly not even mad that they did it. I just don't feel good, to put it like that.
I'm not even. My opinion's the same as it was in the Winsome situation. I just don't think anybody here is. And by the way, this is like set in the rule book this way, is my understanding. If you pay LCS minimum and get on the global contract database, then you get the poaching protections that an LCS team would get. But if you don't, you don't. So
Which is fair.
and I wouldn't mind that ceiling being lowered. Like the LCS minimum is kind of a high bar to meet, but like CCG, I don't think, even if they made it like a more reasonable bar, I don't think CCG would meet it. I don't think it's a big secret that this is one of the lower paying teams in the league, and it's like I just don't think you can pay a guy in. I don't think you should be able to pay a guy in mouse pads and be like, nah, Manui, it doesn't matter. Like, look, you got a great opportunity here with Tomo getting called up to the LCS, but no, you have to sink down into relegations with us because we own you for $500 a month or whatever. And it's probably more than that. I don't know what CCG pays, but it's.
I would be kind of willing to incline also that CCG wasn't even like I don't think CCG just wouldn't tell him, okay, you think there's a better chance, it's fine, go for it. I feel like
that too.
CCG,
Yeah, I have no idea what kind of involvement CCG had or what degree of consent CCG had for this move either. Though that's also speculation. This may not even be a poaching situation. This may have been like asking CCG nicely, and CCG says, "Yeah, sure, go ahead."
Yeah, like to me, all the bad part or all the bad looks come from just at the very least give them the chance to fight with their full roster. If it works, great. If not, it's okay. But like at the very least, give them that one last chance.
Yeah, I've very much so agree with Gordo. I don't want to give like I don't want to give the option for malicious intent with poaching protections on wages that are far from livable or sustainable to be a full-time esports player for more than like the couple months you're playing. So yeah, it does suck. Like, I'm not saying morally poaching isn't bad. Like, yeah, I mean, if you want to take the moral road here, not great. But also, a lot of the practices around esports roster building right now, it's all morally questionable. So, I mean, we're already at this point in the first place. So, let's just not let. Not that I'm saying any of these teams are maliciously trying to keep their players or whatever, right? Like, but let's not give them the opportunity to even mess up. There's no point.
Yeah. And it's like in the old academy days, right, when everyone's getting a living wage and in theory, like all these teams have vested interests in keeping the players under contract. Yeah, that's its own thing, right? Like there should be a price on exclusivity, right? And I don't think most of the NACL teams meet it. So I mean, I think the way that the rules are set up right now are actually quite fair. Maybe that ceiling gets lowered a little bit, but
yeah, I agree.
I think in principle the idea of in theory, like I think the principle of you have to pay, if you pay X amount, you get poaching protections, and if you don't pay X amount, you don't. I think that's very fair.
I think you even have to enforce it now, or more now that we're going to get cross-region. I think you have to be even more, like, you have to put it at a level where it's fine cross-region, right? Because technically speaking, we're one split away from civil law joining, as well as LATAM. So, like, you do have to put that into consideration as well for for what their money is worth. I should say our because I'm there as well, but yeah.
Yeah, fair, and it's like and like LATAM North will presumably be. They'll have their own league still, but yeah, there will be their own stuff going on. That'll be an interesting subject when we get to it. So let's talk about poaching stuff aside. How do we think this DSG team looks with Manui? I mean, we saw Manui on this DSG team not too long ago. We saw Manui Poom as a bot lane. I mean, probably better than Tenacity bot lane and Brandini top. I think Shizumuto showed Brandini top to be a bit of an issue, especially in game 2. His Udyr ran the rift a little bit.
So
But
I think this time around, actually, just bring it up. I think this version of DSG works better for Minui than the previous one. And funnily enough, it's kind of the same team, but it's a different dynamic because I think that first of all, Tenacity looks much better, so that works much better than when Minui was part of a team. And I think Minui has also kind of developed a bit more, not only staying on like that utility sort of player, but also being able to play his carries in a way. And I think he in the current meta, playing Jhin and Misfortune does fit Minui as well in a pretty comfortable way. So I do think that for DSG, this moment of their current team with Minui, I think probably works much, much better than what was before.
I think Manui's addition to the squad, though, is, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if it fixes like anything for them, like bigger pictures, because I think the biggest issue I've had with DSG and something they seem allergic to fixing, this split in particular, is their consistency, right? Like this team, definition of a coin flip, and I feel like Manui is not the kind of rock or the kind of consistency that this squad needs. In fact, I don't think Manui is the most consistent AD carry out there. I think Manui is good, and he has shown he can be good, but I think that he is going. I think he blends perfectly with the squad that DSG have, and all of the pros and the cons of the team lie within Manui himself. But I don't think he actually fixes any of the cons. And I think come playoffs, I really have no idea where to actually place this team. I feel like them going into playoffs, it really is going to be a coin flip, and I think that this squad probably wouldn't have it any other way, because that's kind of been just their season so far. It really feels like this is a heads up, tails down kind of team, and I feel like Manui is kind of a heads up, tails down kind of AD carry.
Yeah, I'm just not going to exhaust myself with the same points on how I feel about Manui because it's the same. What I will say is, I think I've said it before when this meta came around, this is a beneficial meta for Manui's champion pool because he does not have to obviously play. He still does not have to play like the main AD threat. Like Disguise can now very much so draft around his ability to play, the Ziggs Seraphine, like whatever, if he really wants to play those next to Poom. So it's a better spot for him. But yeah, I mean, we know how I feel about Manui. I don't think this is gonna push the needle too much. He might win them a game where they can allow Young to play like something like how the Jace that he loves so much as that AD mid laner with an AP jungler, go for some sort of, you can go for I'll call it now. Yeah, they're gonna run like a Jace Ziggs game with a Maokai jungle and just
Unlikely.
set up and out poke a team for a series
Could even
win.
do something like a Lilia to go with that as well, with like the Swirl Seed. I feel like that works.
100%.
And that's
Something like
something
that.
Yukino likes a lot. Yeah.
We'll come back to that. I'll point it out if the draft happens. But yeah, like those are the things we can bring to the table. That's one game. I just don't think he brings enough for them to really make noise in the playoffs. So
well,
yeah,
and
I agree.
I mean, here's the thing, and I brought this up about Manui last split too. Like, it's so strange that it's like, feels like Manui has like totally lost that sauce over the course of this year. Like, he just does not. He doesn't play that off bot stuff anymore. He has not play. He hasn't even played a game of Ziggs. He hasn't played any Ziggs. I get it. His Seraphine's not really a thing anymore, right? But hasn't played that either. He plays the supports when
Does he have Senna?
when Trevor plays the Senna. Yeah, like when Trevor, when they do Senna lanes, Trevor plays the Senna, and then it's Manui playing like the Ornn or the Maokai or the Yasuo. I think those are the duos they've run. But yeah, other than like Senna duos, he just plays like meta stuff and maybe a bit more Aphelios than the average bear because that's always been his best marksman. So yeah, I don't like he's like not even that guy anymore. Seemingly, he's not like the mage bot lane guy. which is, I get not wanting to be pigeonholed into that, and maybe he just doesn't think the mage bot lanes are very good. But it's like that, even that like identity that it feels like we've associated with him is not present this split.
That feels like I feel like that could be such a huge commodity for DSG if Manui would actually kind of swallow that identity. Right now, I think we've
Well,
seen
in
it
spring
before.
he played the Seraphine and he played the Ziggs. When he was on DSG, he
playing
played both.
It's weird.
But
It's weird that
on Summer, he is not.
Like,
away from
you
it.
don't even have to play the Seraphine and the Ziggs in this current meta in order to be like the AP mage guy, like in the bot lane. Like Brand AD carry has been proven to work, and Brand is overpowered as hell, and he can also go jungle. There's your flex right there. And Yukino loves his AP junglers as well, so that seems like a good pick that they could use. I really hope that they do that. Karthus bot lane is and forever will be, in my opinion, really good. I don't care what they do with First Strike or Dark Harvest or Karthus himself. Karthus is broken. You can never change my mind on this. So like there are plenty of marksmen, or plenty of mages and AP champions you can go to in the bot lane and make work, right? Especially when you've got wardens as like the quintessential supports right now. These people that like to kind of lock down the enemy and basically force them to take cleanse. You are literally holding them down so that you can have all your spells land, right? You've got that necessary CC to burn all of that damage on a single target. So I feel like Manui's style could work right now, which is really going to, in my opinion, set an expectation for me that DSG could potentially do something, because I think Manui has the ability to pick some of his best champions, to pick his style of game, because the meta simply allows for it.
Yeah, I mean, how about this? Here's this to put it in perspective for you. In spring, there were 2 champions that Manui had played where DSG had over a 50% win rate on them, and they were Ziggs and Hui bot lane. Where that's
Wait,
for
still works.
yeah, and those are
why doesn't Ziggs still work?
Ziggs still works too. No, like
He
other people play
is-
Ziggs. It's not like
It's weird that he stopped playing it because remember he was in a team with Shochi. Like he was when Fear, the first iteration of Fear was successful, was them playing topside aggressive and when we playing Sarah 6 in bot lane. And it's weird that he doesn't pull it off again here when he's back with Shochi, which is the
it's very
part.
strange. I don't understand why that hasn't been their thing. Like I don't know if they've tried it and it hasn't worked in scrims or what, but yeah, he's like very clearly moved away from it. And by the way, that's greater than 50% win rate on stuff that played more than one game, right? He had like random one-off. Like he played 1 Lucian, 1 Zeri, 1 Jinx, and won those games in spring.
I feel like the reason Ziggs has kind of fallen out of favor in the AD carry meta right now, and maybe, I'm not the ADC of the group, so maybe Slayer can correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of feels like the champions that are good in bot lane right now are either hyperscalers that have range, so stuff like Smolder, to me, outscales Ziggs, and Ezreal, who also outranges Ziggs, and it kind of feels like Ziggs is at a point where he's a jack of all trade and a master of none. And you kind of need to either heavily index into range or you need to heavily index into range and scaling, or all-in potential around the like level 2, level 3, level 6 mark, with champions like Leona and Nautilus being your supports of choice.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree on the point that there are a lot of better AD carry options, obviously, in those groups you're talking about. But Ziggs also does very much so fit into the range and scaling thread. It's just that there are a lot of marksmen that do outscale him right now, right? But the one place where I think you can push that flexibility through and where I'm still held up in, this would all be very problematic if you did not have a meta where you could just send these marksmen mid and have him play the Ziggs. Like, that's where I'm held up. It's like, all right.
I mean, can Young even play?
I guess. Well, I mean this
no,
goes back to my other problem this goes to another problem.
But that's the
Young
thing.
is out
You
of touch
played
right
it.
now with the meta.
That was playable in CCG because Shoshi does play 6.
Yeah.
But if he didn't play 6 with a mid laner that actually flexes the 6, now that he has a mid laner that will 100% not flex the 6 because that's not Young's style, then are you incentivized to go for it? I would say yes, but like this version of Minui is weird that he doesn't go for that when in spring, like just 2 months, 3 months ago, he was going for this with pretty much a similar team, and it was to a certain degree working out. It almost put them in playoffs, or in playoffs now in losers finals. It almost
Yep.
worked out perfectly for them. Like it's such a weird transition for them. And this is DSG we're talking about it. We haven't even jumped to CCG, where I actually think, like, obviously the fact that I think you probably keeping the roster was a much better thing for DSG in general, but Loki Rockboom just play 80 carries. So that already gives them a chance to actually give them an 80 carry that can carry them out in the late game, which was something that CCG did struggle for in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I actually think Rockboom and Trevor together are a really good pairing. I think they both play the game like the same way, and then it's compounded by what you're saying, TDS, that the meta is really good for Rockboom right now, because Trevor's that guy that is all about finding what is the coolest engage angle I can find with an engage champion, and that's when Trevor's at his best. And what does Rockboom like to do? He plays every champion that will follow the support wherever he decides to go.
Yeah.
I wish we
Zeri,
could understand
Baron.
Zeri,
Rockboom.
Kaisa, he'll play the Kaisa. Like, so I think this is a really big switch for CCG, and
Yep.
And
all I'll say now is I would not be shocked if CCG win 2-1 over Fly, because nobody is prepped for Rockboom Trevor with the rest of the CCG roster.
They need to 100% win, right? Just
yes,
they do. They have to win.
It's
and
win
Fly has
your in,
nothing to
lose
play
your
for,
out.
really.
They actually we talked about this before the show.
Yeah, we did
It's
the
kept
math.
simple.
I hate that.
Yep. So let's
Disappointed, but
get
well.
into that a little bit. Let's start with Fly versus AoE.
Do I just leave and let Quax do whatever he wants to do here? Or, like,
I mean, oh boy, Fly versus AoE.
I could fill my water bottle up.
They won one.
Because
They
we
won
need to
one
we need to
game.
contextualize this matchup with the Fly AoE series, where
Yeah.
like Fly wins this series. I think this is the worst series from Fly yet. Like
By
I think
far.
this is the worst series from Fly I've seen since they ever.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
ever,
yeah,
right?
it's
Like at
terrible.
least
Yeah,
since
more than
like
likely, actually.
yeah, at
All right.
least since
Do we
like,
count Fly first as Fly?
no,
Because
we
if
don't
not,
count
then
Fly Fam as Fly.
yeah, because if Fly Fam is there, then yeah, no. But if not,
This is-
then yes, this is the worst.
Yeah, I mean this is. We keep saying like, oh man, Flyquest need to pull out of this, and they're just digging deeper every week. They are just.
Yeah,
They are just looking terrible. I think that game 3 especially is just abysmal. Like City Witty on Hecarim is just crushing Shaden in the jungle matchup. He's getting so much more done. He's setting up the whole team. Like Fly take a Baron, but they lose the fight and they give AoE Soul, and like it's impossible for anybody to do anything to like actually get in and like contest AoE for the Elder. And then like Chime gets a flash miracle hook and saves the whole game.
Yeah, if mobility dodges that hook, I think the series is very different, because Onad actually had a really good Weaver's Wall. Directly after that, he's I'm looking at it right now. He split up Chime from the rest of the team. Chime would not have had flash, and the Blitzcrank would have died. They would have gotten a 4v5, they would have had control of the pit, and the Elder at 7k would have immediately bursted it down, and then they would have killed the rest of Flyquest and probably ended the game, because they had teleport coming up from Cozy. So yeah, this series, I guess if I want to go into this with a statement, by far the worst I've ever seen Flyquest. I think this series to me cements that Flyquest, while they do make playoffs, and thank God for them, they do make that. This is a really worrying sign to me of the potentially really the player careers, because a lot of people going into this season were like, oh yeah, Flyquest, 4 out of 5 of those players, they can go into LCS and probably do better than Shopify Rebellion. Now,
didn't we sit here in the primer and say this? Like, didn't we? I feel like we all said this at the primer.
Yes.
Like, it was us.
Well, we said this in spring and we were right.
Yeah.
And now we're saying, and then we said this in the summer power rankings. Now it kind of feels like the opposite is happening, where I would say really the only player I'm sure that should be going to the LCS is Surdy,
Yeah.
of course. Like Shaden, in my opinion, has had a really, really bad back half of the split. Again, it really feels like they have no idea what to do with Shaden. Like, this is a person that loves to play, the aggressive junglers, the Kindred, the Graves, like all the time in solo queue, you'll see him playing Lee Sin and stuff like that. He loves to be in the enemy jungler space and just outhands them. They put him on shit like Ivern. They put him on shit like Sejuani. They try to make him facilitate Bradley, and for the life of me, Bradley has not been able to play anybody in the laning phase, which is his biggest strength as a player, I would argue. He plays stuff like the Yone, the Tristana, the LeBlanc. These are all lane specialty champions. He hasn't been able to get shit done. And that, as a result, has not only made him struggle, but it's made the power influx struggle, because most of the time Surdy is able to hold his own against top lane. Sajed can usually get ahead in the bot lane, and if Sajed is really the only one, along with like half of Surdy, who's able to be relevant in the late game, then you are just going to get out team fought, which is what happens basically all the time with these guys. Because if you're losing to team fights against an AoE roster that's getting paid McChickens and has had 2 seconds to scrim together, then I don't know what to tell you, man. Like,
I don't want to let Surdy all the way off the hook here either, though. And like, especially that game 2, like, the game plan works. Like, they perma-gank top lane with this Sejuani to set Surdy's Renekton up. He's got like 4 kills. He gets the first turret gold. He's like 3,000 or 4,000 gold ahead individually, and he does nothing in these fights. Like, he's just getting chunked out early and forced to exit without having a lot of influence. And they lose the whole game, because they just dump all their resources into Surdy, can't capitalize, and get outscaled. So, even Surdy is, like, at least as, like, a primary carry play around me top laner, is not showing up the way that I would expect him to, given that, he's the guy slamming Vayne top all day, every day in solo queue and, like, breaking LP records, right? So you want him to be able to be this kind of carry top.
Every game, bro.
Is that the argument?
Yeah, literally, I do. Okay, so I don't know if any of you guys go onto like the LOL Reddit or whatever.
Unfortunately, sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know.
check
I
it
think I've gotten dumber. But no, some of the shit they say whenever Surdy posts like, just broke this record, just got 2,200 LP. People in the comments, more often than not, like, there are more comments saying this than more comments being like, oh my god, that's so big, congratulations. There are more people who are like, yeah, but you're red side 12 out of 15 games, and so as a result, you are winning, like, more. And also you're playing range top. And I'm like, if it was so easy, then why don't you do it? Like, I seriously think some of the r/League of Legends users, I can't say it actually, otherwise I think I'm just banned. But
we just make Gordo edit it. It's fine.
You might have to just straight up like blip off my camera for like 5 seconds.
We did talk about this before a show, boys.
It is funny though. It is funny that like those people just like negate the fact. I love how when people negate how many variables there are in solo queue from your team alone. Sure, he gets red side counterpick, but he has 4 randos on his team every single time, and like the variance of it's the rule of the solo queue, right? It's like only 25% of your games do you actually have any real effect on, because like a good 40% of them you're just gonna get a team that ints you. So like the fact that he's winning this much, just with like randos, is already enough for me. I don't really care what side he's playing on or what he's playing.
I will say, I feel like that's an interesting mentality when you are in like challenger elo, but at least for
that's
me,
not for challenger elo. Yeah,
but like for me, like a lot of the people that say this are probably like emerald or below.
Hey, it's me, Emerald.
But it's like, to me, the best mentality, like, and this is kind of off topic, but the best mentality to like actually climb is like, if you were replaced by Faker or Canyon or the best player in the world, the best player in your respective position, would they be able to carry the game that you are in? 99 out of 100 times, the answer is going to be yes. Therefore, the game is winnable, but you're just not there yet. So that is kind of my mentality going into the game. Shout out to Drexer, whose document taught me that one. But that's just kind of how I think about it. Like, every game is winnable because if you were replaced by someone who is the best at their role in the world, they would probably be able to carry it.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I wish r/League of Legends users had maybe 1% of that motto down, because maybe it would encourage them to get off Reddit, and especially get off hating Surdy's accomplishments.
Or hate him with better facts.
Yeah, come on.
True.
If you're gonna bring
True.
hatred,
Yes.
you better have
Talk
some
about this
basis
game
to it.
too versus AOE.
Yeah.
when you're gonna hate.
Blame him for inting 4K gold leads in pro
Oh
games.
man,
That'll
yeah.
be
I mean,
better.
listen, I don't.
This game was bad.
Yeah, and it's like I don't even want to talk about the AOE side. Like, yeah, mobility could have dodged the Blitzcrank hook, and then they probably win the series. But it's like, whatever. We'll talk about AOE when it comes to be promotion tournament time. These guys are 0-8.
Yeah, I
They're
don't
gonna-
really want to mention them.
Yeah,
if
these
I'm
guys are going to
honest.
go 0-8. They're not in the playoffs conversation. We'll talk about them when it's relegation tournament time. For now, this is about Fly Challengers and whether or not they can beat CCG and send Winthrop University to playoffs.
I hope not.
I don't.
I
know.
I hope not.
I hope not, because
Really
I
hope not.
put Winthrop in AOE 910. So like this would
Yeah,
validate
same here.
my power rankings.
Yeah, as
So
well.
Yeah, I
Um,
honestly couldn't care less if the like this is completely a biased opinion, and people can haunt me later for that or not. I honestly couldn't care less. But like, I just do it for the power rankings. I just want to be able to at the
Just
end
here to be
laugh
right.
and say I'm here and was right about Winthrop. I'm also kind of labeled as a Winthrop hater already, so like it just goes into character very well.
Yeah. I really feel like this second game was insane. Like, Bradley gets picked off while his team is attempting to do Baron.
That happens.
So like, he dies. They manage to get the Nash, but then they start the fight with a numbers advantage. Everyone on Flyquest dies. This is literally, game 2 is literally a carbon copy of kind of like that Blue Water game against Team Liquid, where they were like down for 95% of the game. They won one fight, one with like underline and bold and like italicized, one team fight, and the game was over. Which is just like, I never thought I would see Flyquest, the guys that won Spring, in the same boat of issues as Team Liquid, who we literally just said were basically the quintessential middle of the pack team. It is just absolutely baffling to me that both of these squads have such similar issues after having two completely different results not 6 months ago.
But at least this does give like Quad so much more like credit, because that like I do not think he was the only reason why that Flyquest team succeeded. But it's kind of difficult to say otherwise, because like the stark difference between Quad's Fly C and Bradley's Fly C, and I have to say Bradley because they play the same position, but the stark difference between the two versions of Fly C is it's kind of incredible to not say any other word, because like I do not think that Bradley was that big of a downgrade compared to Quad, and I even said that in the preseason power rankings, right? But like I just don't think Flycy is playing for what Bradley is capable of doing, and in the same vein, I think Bradley is not playing to what Flycy needs. So it just feels like, and I said this in the previous show, I think Bradley is stuck in playing with CCG, with what he was playing with at CCG, and Flycy is stuck at playing with Quad, and they haven't taken away that identity from either of them. And that's a big issue, because come playoffs, they need to realize that both players are different players first and foremost, and there's games where Bradley can play the more in-your-face kind of champions. Like, he plays a great Akali. Like, he can be a great Akali player, but Akali is obviously not meta, so he's not going to opt into that. He opts into the other mages. Whereas you can be 100% sure that Quad in this meta, even if it wasn't out, he could have gone for the Asir or even the Yone in some situations, and he can carry those sorts of games pretty well. And I think that Flycy needs to find that medium where they can play this to a similar degree to what Quad was able to do, but put Bradley into that spot, not Quad, because Quad days are over. Quad is in greater and better things already. So you need to understand that that's not the case anymore for your team.
Yeah, I mean, even like for me, and this is gonna kind of go back to game 2. I don't understand why Flyquest's Challenger's plan in most of these games isn't to just buddy Shaden up with Bradley to get him.
Yeah.
Because the difference between the main difference between me for Bradley and Quad is the fact that Quad is so mechanically gifted as a solo laner that you never had to worry about him falling behind. You almost never had to worry about him going even. The guy would come out of lane with these absurd leads, and
He literally broke the stats because of how ahead he would get every game. Like
exactly. And Bradley is just not. He's not
Nah.
Quad. He's not going to get that.
He's not.
But when you look at the rest of the team too, it's like Surdy is Surdy. Like we don't need to funnel Surdy anything. Like yeah, I get the strategy. Like funnel your best player all the gold and he'll win the game. No, he'll get a good enough lead on his own. I trust Sajed, and I personally trust Sajed and Time and Chime in like every lane matchup they're getting this season. So why are we not just like force feeding Bradley to get him past his weakest area of his gameplay? You don't lose a game if you're Fly Challengers by that point. It's not that simple, but like at least give it more of a shot than I've seen them do it this season.
Yeah.
I really feel like their win conditions just have to change. Like what they've been playing for has been. It almost feels like Shaden has been like the rocket booster for Bradley for most of the season. I think it needs to be the opposite. Like I do think Bradley has the potential to like Bradley, in my opinion, is really good at utilizing prio. Like maybe he will not solo kill you in the lane phase, but he is very aggressive. That aggressiveness does lead to more opportunities in the jungle, in my opinion. And so I do think that Shaden is the kind of player that if you let him, he can give you he can take a lead, he can take an inch and completely take over a mile, right? Like I certainly think that there is definitely a world where Bradley gets shoved, gets priority, hopefully gets TDS's camera back.
Oh, wait, what
And
happened?
I don't know.
at the end of the day, can move with Shaden to make these aggressive plays and potentially even just look for things on the bot side. Because I agree with Slayer's point. You guys don't really need to do anything with Surdy. Like you can let him be in top lane and probably just eat pressure all day long. Yes, you're back now. But it just kind of feels like they're all over the place whenever they make a game plan. And I think they need something more concrete. They need something more solid. And so far, it feels like what they've been trying to do hasn't been working. Really, I just think you play around the bot side. I think you play around dragons, and I think you make sure that Sajed and Shaden are your carries. Bradley can be a secondary carry. Surdy can be Surdy, and Chime can be Chime. You don't have to change much. You just have to kind of switch around a couple of players and the roles they fulfill in the team.
I
Yeah,
wish.
Just to double down on that point real quickly. Top lane is by definition supposed to be primarily sucking pressure. Like, how many times have we preached on broadcasts that we do where it's like, oh yeah, he didn't die, he doesn't have any kills.
Does this, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
like, oh yeah, he didn't die, insert random top laner, didn't die to this gank. He didn't get any kills though, but he took up pressure for the map. Like that's why we call top laners psychopaths, because they love getting ganked and not dying because the rest of their team is doing things, hopefully, while they're just sucking up pressure. So yeah, I mean,
like I could say as a jungler, if my top laner eats up ganks and doesn't die, I don't care if he gets a solo kill. I care that he doesn't get dove and die on repeat and create an issue that I'm going to have to deal with later down the line. If he is eating up the pressure and just being relevant by the time, laning phase is over and we all start grouping up, I'll love that guy forever. I might even add him. Like, I just love top laners like that. And I feel like Dirty, he's obviously good enough to be that guy, but it just feels like Flyquest don't want him to be that guy. And instead want Shaden to be the typical weak side jungler who just kind of goes around serving like omelets to his team all the time. And I feel like that has to change. I really want to see that change. Especially with mid lane's changes and how scaling marksmen that can easily garner prio are going to be kind of back in flavor. I think that could open up a door for Flyquest potentially, and I want to see them unlock it with as many keys as possible.
I agree with that. So let's segue that then into Fly Challengers versus CCG. So that's going to be the match to watch this upcoming week. That's the match that determines who makes it to playoffs. If Flyquest win, Winthrop will make it. If CCG win, they will make it. It's that simple. The specific records don't matter. We'll figure out your CAM TDS, whatever.
Oh, wait, it's down again.
It died again, but whatever. So, I mean, how do we feel about this matchup? I mean, can Flyquest?
It's kind of amazing the fact that it's not even dependent on Winthrop to get to play. Well, it technically was, and they lost their chance.
Yeah, I mean, they needed to win more series, and they didn't.
It was technically in their hands, and they kind of screwed it up because Blue Otter did their job. They needed to win, and they won. And then Winthrop just needed to win, and they would have been able to qualify as well. So I just feel like CCG has, well, obviously losing Minui is not the best thing to happen before the last match, but I feel like they have everything in their favor going into this one. You know that the fate is in your hands if you win. You know that Flycy is coming off of a tough look, even if they won in their previous game, and even before that they lost. So like, Flycy's not, Flycy's not in the best spot possible, and realistically, you have ways to play against them. I think that the addition of Rockboom is a win condition that they can go for. Like that is a place where they can 100% put their chips on, especially knowing that Flycy doesn't play for Sagat that much, and just put everything onto Rockboom to be able to hyper carry you, and that can be your win condition 100%.
I actually kind of like the point that you brought up earlier, TDS, about Rockboom's playstyle. Like, he won't be the guy that goes in first, he'll be the guy that goes in second. I think that this style of play is going to work really well, and I'm excited to see it with a player like Kryra, right? Because Kryra has stuff like the Zac, right, in his pocket. So I think if they can give Kryra something like Zac, if they can give Rockboom something like Kaisa or Zeri, then you're kind of complementing the two play styles of your new players, and arguably your two greatest win conditions. I think Kryra is so good. Like, I really think that this guy could make the difference when it comes to, like, can they make playoffs or not? Can they avoid relegation or not? I certainly think Kryra gives them a much greater chance. I think Rockboom, whether or not he gives them a greater chance, I feel like that's kind of up in the air, but I certainly feel like his playstyle complements Kryra's to the point where my hopes are up instead of down. So I personally think if I had to put a pin or a prediction on this series, I would actually say it's probably going to be CCG 2-0. I'm going to be honest. I don't even think it's going to be a 2-1. I feel like Flyquest's issues get worse and worse every week. I think CCG are on the come up. I think Cryo's a really good player. I think Rockboom's a really good player. Rockboom was the sub for Dragonsteel and managed to get them their first series win way back in the early season. So he's able to play on top tier teams like that. I think the squad actually is really solid. And personally, to see both the teams that made the promotion tournament be safe from relegation, would that be the first time that's ever happened?
Yes.
Because that would be that would be cinema. That would be awesome. So part of me actually kind of hopes that happens.
Yeah, I think it's almost a guarantee CCG wins a game. It's just I want it to be true, but I don't know if I can. I'm not going to fully stake all my very, very real credentials as a Salt Mine podcaster that they'll come up with this win. It will certainly be very cool, and I already talked about. I do think talk a little bit more about Rockboom, right? I in a lot of ways look at Rockboom in the same eyes as like a Levitate, where I really see the potential for Rockboom to be an NACL level marksman.
I agree.
The difference with him between Levitate's story is that obviously he already had a shot, right, with Lit Esports. The caveat I give with Lit is that Lit's team was always about Dragoon and messages. It was always about their solo lanes. This is the first time I think we'll see Rockboom be put on the pedestal that he's earned to try and show himself as that second guy in.
Yeah.
or one of those main carries. I think it'll be very
Yeah.
fun to see. Hopefully CCG does it, right? I think the roster around them, like that should be somewhat of the game plan. Maybe Crimson makes a little weirder, but let's just let Cryer and Rockboom like show out for at least a game of this series and see what they've got. That's the hope I'm hoping from this.
I think that's how they win, because I think Flyquest have a lack of prep when it comes to those players, and I think those players are really good carries. So I really feel like there isn't a reason to at least try to make them the win conditions. If it falls through, obviously you can pivot, but I certainly think that there is validity in actually trying to let Rockboom and Kryra be the guys at center stage.
It's also so cool for us tier 3 guys if Kryra and Rockboom are the ones to win CCG into playoffs. Like, it just validates every single tier 3 caster that has made the point while watching a Kryra and or Rockboom game of saying, this guy should like maybe get an ACL job.
Yeah.
So,
the other thing is like, yeah, I mean, for Rockboom, I agree with the upside there. I think that's really worth considering because, like, his support last split was Plux, right?
yeah, like
I don't want to hate on Plux too much, but I think he was, towards the bottom of supports in the league for sure. And I think a lot of people pointed towards some good upsides being shown by Rockboom, but it's like he was never going to be coming out of lane without a deficit, really, with Plux's support. So a big change there to be able to see Plux, or see Rockboom rather, with a support like Trevor. I agree with the comments earlier that I think that's an upgrade kind of for him individually. Like, I think he's playing with a better team on this CCG roster than he was playing with
Lit.
Yeah, with Lit.
Certainly.
I did also want to highlight, we called out last week that roster sheet shared by Zav had Chad as the starter. I've since had it confirmed. They've had it like that every week, even when Kryra's been starting, so probably safe to assume it'll still be Kryra coming into week 9.
Yep, would make the most sense, and honestly, it's the best the team has looked. So, I feel like for this one match, you need to put everything on what has worked, and hopefully it works out. Because once again, I want to look right with CCG being above Winthrop, and second, I think it would be hilarious and kind of ironic that the split that Winthrop kind of got in via not qualifying, but just buying the spot, they go back into relegation tournament. Like, I feel like that would be kind of ironic for it.
I also just feel like Winthrop. Okay, I will say I do think there are some Winthrop players that should be in the NACL, but I do not think. Like, I think in particular, I think Aaron needs a permanent spot in the NACL. I think he looks really good. I think Denethor still looks really good. I think Darkwings is also really good. That said, I don't know, man. Like part of me, it almost feels like you are more. It almost feels like we as like storytellers and casters and people that like, we like a good story, right? It almost feels more rewarding to have a team like CCG who fought tooth and nail through the tournament, right? Managed to get through there with Bradley taking names and Yukino going crazy, right? All of that. That feels way more rewarding to be kept in the NACL than Winthrop, who were in the promotion tournament, got absolutely ass blasted, but had the big bucks, so they managed to get in there. Like, which team would you rather root for, right? The one that bought their way in, or the one that quite literally earned their way?
Yeah, and the sprinkles on top of your ice cream cone here, Quax, as well as the team that the players that they got through to get here with got poached from them. So if they get to the playoffs without what we talked about, their best players, which were Bradley and Yukino, in our opinion, they still make playoffs. That's the sprinkles right on top of the ice cream cone.
Yeah,
it is for sure. So, yeah, the last thing that I want to leave off on, because I think we've hit a nice little sweet spot of about an hour and 10 minutes here. So I'm happy with what we've got to chat about today. The one more thing I wanted to bring up that's just kind of crazy to me that I'm really cooking about looking into next week is if Kryra has another good performance and CCG end up winning up against Fly Challengers, is Kryra rookie of the split? Because he'll have only played 3 series, so I can already see Slayer getting upset.
I'm the math guy. No.
But, well, so here you go, math. Here you go, math guy.
I don't think he counts. I really don't.
No.
Like,
Well, let me finish my point. Here to the math guy in particular. This will be a player that has played. Yes, they've only played 3 series, but this will be a player that came in on a team with about a 30% win rate. Himself having a 60% win rate, it gets him into playoffs. Like I think
I get it.
that's
It's a
really
great
like
argument, but no.
that's so notable. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean Levitate and Samikin, of course.
Yeah,
I really
also
think it
think
belongs
just
they're
feel
to
there's
better
two
Samikin.
better than him.
I think it belongs to it has to. I would say Levitate, Samikin are probably your 2 biggest. I would say are your 2 biggest candidates. I would also say that Zamudo doesn't count. No,
No,
'cause,
Zamudo's been playing a couple
he's-
splits.
Yeah, he's
This
been
wasn't
playing
playing.
for a while.
It should be Aaron. It should be Aaron, Kryra, or
Aaron's
Samikin, my
Aaron's
opinion.
played before too. Aaron was on.
Oh,
whoops,
really?
Wildcard,
Aaron-
yeah, he was
Yep.
on Wildcard. Never mind.
Yeah.
So it should just be Sam.
I think
would
the
love
only
it
other
to-
real contenders are like Denethor.
Denethor would be, I think.
Yeah, Denethor is a contender, and I think that is that it. I think
Well,
that's it.
technically, like there's 3 players from AOE that never debuted, like, right? I think Barrick,
Oh yeah, I guess like a Barrick and Cozy,
Cozy, Mobility
and
Now.
Wilson and Cupic and yeah, that's it. Those guys are all in the running
Technically,
too.
those count as well.
Mhm.
And then what? Well,
Oh,
Kryra,
and
obviously,
Crimson.
but yeah.
Crimson is also.
Crimson also counts.
And we're back after some technical difficulties, just in time to send everybody off. Thank you very much for tuning on in, and we will see everybody next week for our All-Star video and our playoffs preview. All right.